All right, hello everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for our first Unleashing Microsoft Teams for the EMEA time zone. Very excited to have this kicking off today, and we're looking forward to doing many more of these with you and your peers in the future. Just a quick round of intro. So my name is Jace Marino, and I look after Teams platform globally for Microsoft's customer success unit. We have some amazing speakers today, and I'm very excited. We've done this in 3 time zones, and Novo Nordisk is officially our first customer to be joining us. So we have Kaya and Kathleen to join us, and they're going to share their story a little bit later, as well as Kit, who's their customer success manager. And then behind the scenes, we also have some legends here from Microsoft's own customer success group who are going to be answering your questions that you have as we go through today. So please feel free to pop in your questions, and you can also, if you want to keep them anonymous, let us know, and we're absolutely happy to keep those questions anonymous and just between us. All right, so to kick things off, and bear with me here, because I don't normally start with a quote, but I love this one. This came from our CEO, who's this gentleman right here, Satya, about 2 years ago in an interview he had when he was talking about how we recruit Microsoft employees. And I love the quote, and it's really hit home with me in the last 2 years as I've been looking after Teams platform, and we'll explain what that is here in a bit, globally for Microsoft in product marketing and for our customer success group, because this is what it feels like we're doing with organizations. And cool is not our goal by any means, but it's been, how do you take your existing investments in applications and in services and in your software, and how do you bring it to life regardless of who built those services? How do you make it easier to get work done leveraging everything that you already have? And again, we'll show you what that exactly looks like with real examples, but it's been such a fun 2 years, and I'm hoping that sharing some of what we've seen and done with you today, both from Microsoft and your peers around the world, will provide you some value and start the conversation within your organization. Now, one thing I want to say as a bit of a disclaimer is that cool comes in many different shapes and sizes. And again, I wouldn't even necessarily phrase it as cool, but just pulling off from that quote. We have a very diverse group today, not only geographically, but culturally, and also with respect to your team's experience. Some of you are brand new to Teams, some of you have been using it for a while, and everything in between. And so we took that into account when we built out some of this content. And today is all about what's possible. We can't cover everything in an hour, but we'll cover some of the basics. We'll cover some really complex and fun examples. But this is really about giving you ideas about what's possible by seeing what others are doing, Microsoft and your peers included. And then after today's session, each future call will cover specific topics and scenarios in a little bit more depth and almost entirely with local examples and local speakers. Again, very excited because Novo Nordisk beat us to the punch on this one, and we're having them on our first call, which is amazing. And then I will also be sending these links out to everybody because we did get a few questions over the first 2 calls that we ran in the Americas and Asian time zones, that folks who just wanted to learn how to use Teams better. And that's not necessarily what we're going to be covering today in the core foundation and functionality of Teams. So we'll send you a couple of these, but the first place I go check out is in the bottom left-hand side of your Teams client. If you just want to learn how to use the product better, if you hit the Help tab in the bottom left-hand side of your Teams app, there's an option for training. There's a bunch of great videos sitting on there, and then we'll give you these other 2 links in order to get started. All right, so with that, jumping into why we're here, just a little bit of background before we get started. I wanted to address this because we're in really funky times right now, right? And thanks to technology, and this is almost becoming cliche in such a short amount of time, but work became digital overnight, right? And some of you were already on that path, some of you were already there, but many organizations digitally transformed, so to speak, over the course of a couple of days when we've been talking about it for years, decades even. And that's because employees have access to the tools that they need to effectively work when they're outside of the office. But if we take a step back and really think about this, in all honesty, the challenge that we're seeing is that many organizations, because COVID hit so fast in so many regions around the world, they didn't have time to redesign work to take advantage of this new medium. And so instead, many organizations have ultimately ended up recreating how they work in the office online. And I think that's fine because it's a great first step. But now we have a lot of companies coming to us and saying that we're seeing these bad habits from the workplace, and they're getting extrapolated because we're online now. And a couple of examples is hyper responsiveness, people feeling like they need to be across all the information that comes across their various applications and respond to it. Multiple people on meetings who never speak, but do that thanks everyone at the end to feel like they participated. And then you get hundreds of interruptions during the day with all of your different collab tools, right? So people keep on notifications, they keep getting distracted, your desktop is constantly ringing, and it keeps you from getting valuable work done. And so on that, funny enough, these stats that I wanted to share with you are from a Gartner research report that we ran 2 years ago. And I think they're just as relevant today, if not more so, as they were 2 years ago. But 3 of them stood out to me, which I think perfectly encompass some of the challenge that we're facing today and how we'll address getting through this challenge together. And the first is we surveyed organizations, which we called enterprise organizations, of over 5,000 people. And we focused on these knowledge workers, which are the people who spent most of the day at their desk. And we found on average, these folks were spending 20% or more of their day just searching for content and information. Now, is that a new challenge? Probably not. But should it be better in 2020 with all of the technology we have at our fingertips? Absolutely. But even more concerning is those same people also spend an additional 28% of their day managing email. Now, I'm not sitting here as some millennial that's telling you that email is going away and this is all going to become chat-based collaboration. You know, I honestly and selfishly hope that at some point. But the ultimate point here is that the average desk worker in the average enterprise organization around the world is spending almost 50% of their time managing work. Right? And then even most concerning to me is this final statistic here that says almost 6 out of every 10 managers think they're missing important information daily due to information overload, due to all of those pings and chats and meetings. And it feels difficult sometimes to, and I hear a lot of people asking, when do I actually get work done? Because I'm constantly responding and in meetings. And if I can stop and pull back for a second, summarize, I think there's one key thing this data is telling us. And it's that productivity isn't just about the tool or the application that you're using. It's also about the approach. Right? Now, I'm saying this for a couple of reasons. First is because you can't just give teams to everybody and expect culture to change overnight. It just doesn't work that way. I'd love to tell you that it does, but it requires some commitment and some approach. I will say this, all humility aside, I think we've built one of the tools that's in the best place to help organizations make this change, right? We've seen a ton of success with teams and we're so grateful for all the support we've had from organizations. But again, the approach is just as important as the tool, including Microsoft Teams. And this is exactly why we invested in one of the largest customer success organizations on the planet. So we can help deliver those approaches that allow organizations to effectively not only evolve their technology, but evolve some of their culture in a lot of cases. Now, what I'll say is one of the most successful approaches that we've seen and what we're going to talk about today, which is all focused on how to take this approach, is just meeting your people where they already are. It's not necessarily introducing new things. It's how do you help them leverage what they already have better. And so when we think about Teams, Teams itself is a platform. And what that means is it gives you the ability to connect into existing applications and services that you already have. And so what that actually looks like, just to break it down for you, is these are what are available out of the box, so to speak, on day one in Microsoft Teams. You have your Microsoft built applications. We have about 45 available, last I checked this. And then your third-party applications, where we're getting close to 500 now. Now, if you go into the bottom left-hand side of your Teams desktop application and you click on Store Apps and you don't see any applications there, it's because we also give tenant admins, so folks in your IT department more than likely, the ability to turn off applications to make sure they meet your security and compliance regulations. So reach out to your IT team if you don't see any on there. But if you click on that store, you'll likely see at least some Microsoft and third-party apps available for you straight out of the box, so to speak, on day one. And then what we'll show today as well are some concepts of custom applications. So how do you start to bring your existing applications that your organization built into Teams, or how do you start to connect these existing applications, all 3 of them, better together? And custom apps can render in an unlimited amount of ways, but there's a couple things that we'll touch on today. And the first 2 are what we have to help you get started. I'm going to save the explanations on these for a little bit later because we're going to touch on them in a bit. And then finally, we also do built from scratch, which really the possibilities are endless if you want to leverage our Azure cloud, Microsoft Graph to tap into identity and all the different services that we have available. I'm going to take this slow though, because it's our first call and we'll dive into various topics that cover all of these as we move forward. But there's one thing that I'm hoping gets burned into everybody's retinas from today when you think about Microsoft Teams, because it's so much more than a chat and a meeting and a collaboration solution. And those are foundational and important today probably more than ever. But teams where engineering refers to it is a scaffolding. And it is this housing or this front door to your organization, if you will, that brings together. Now, today I'm hoping it's valuable because that's phase one. This ability is phase one. Now, why is this more valuable to me as a user? So that's why I think we'll touch here on some real life scenarios. And what we thought we'd do is rather than give you a bunch of slides and show you some of these, I thought I'd give you some real examples and show you how Microsoft's using this today. So I want you to imagine it for a second. Back to that point on the scaffolding is that your workplace apps and info were there just when you needed them. And not that they were there, but they actually followed you throughout your day across your team's experience and made your life easier. And so what I want to show you here real quick is how Teams has made my life easier as the person who looks after Teams platform globally. And so this is my actual Teams environment right here. Now I did get called out on this yesterday. I am in ring 1 on our engineering build. So there's one thing you're going to see on here that I'm going to show you that's not available yet, but you'll get a little sneak peek. But I want to show you how we actually plan these events, the one that you're at right now, as well as these more intimate personal workshops that we run, which we call Teams Platform Roadshows, inside of Teams. Because this has been, it's made my life so much easier. And so the way this often starts is one of our customer success managers, or our CSMs, will come to me and say, we want to run a workshop with some of our customers and we want to show them what's possible. So a lot of what we're talking about today, and then a little bit in more depth, because we usually spend between 2 and 3 hours together. And so the first thing is I will actually start and create a channel. So I'm in the Teams Platform Roadshows team. I will add a channel, and the way the channel works, I'm going to save you the demo on that, is I will add a channel that's got the location and the date of the event that we've determined together based on our conversation. So that's step 1 right there. Then what I do is I go up here and I've got a tab in the general channel here. If you're not familiar with tabs, basically you click on this plus sign and you've got the option to add tons of different applications and services into your chats and channels right in Teams. And this one right here is called a wiki tab, which allows me to just put in text. And I have created a welcome message for users. And so what I do is I go copy that welcome message and then I go take it into the new channel and I post it. And then I also pin it for users. And I'll show you what that looks like in a second. So that way that when they pop into their first channels, they've actually got a message waiting for them. Now, what I do is after I then invite the CSM, so I create the channel, I post in the channel, then I add the member, I make them an owner so they can go invite their peers into the team, so whoever's going to help them with the event. And then I also create a tag. Now, if anybody's not familiar with tags, I'll show you why these are so valuable here in a second. But you can create a tag and you can name it whenever you want. So I'll say demo here, and let's say that I want to add Heidi's, one of the vendors that I work with, and Lindley. These are the 2 legends that make a lot of this happen. And I create that tag. And so when I go into channels, I can now mention the tag itself. And let me show you what that looks like here. So I'll give you an example of one of these events that we are doing a very bad job of planning. If you caught when we posted this, it was back in April and we still haven't done anything yet. So I got to work with Steve on this, but I posted this for Steve. So this was his welcome into the team. Notice that there's a little pin sign right here. So this is coming to everybody in Teams, and you can hit the little ellipses here by hovering over the message and you'll be able to pin a message. And so when everybody pops into the chat for their first time, you see the pin message immediately. So it's a great new feature that's coming to everyone. So I do this to all of our channels. And then what I do is I'll go in and I'll tag the actual, or I'll mention the actual tag. So right here, US South Central is the tag that I'm using. Now here's why this is important. We've got a bunch of different channels for different events all over the world. If I use the US South Central tag, it only tags the people who've identified and I put into that tag. Otherwise, if I tag the channel, everybody else in this team will get a notification in their activity feed up here at the top left, and it creates a bunch of additional noise that we don't need. So I'd highly recommend using these tags. It's much easier to have all of these teams together, but then not overwhelm people with a bunch of different notifications. And again, going back to distractions and the data we shared at the beginning, this has become incredibly important. Okay, so now Steve's hopped into the channel. Now Steve has read through my message and he wants to plan his event. Here's how this process works. Is we go back to the general channel, which we rarely use for communication. In all honesty, this is where we house most of our content. And up here, he'll actually see a registration site request. So if you registered for this event today, you used a website called Event Builder, which we leverage all the time at Microsoft. And what we did is we said we wanted to make it easy to get the information we need and get these registration sites set up. And so if it loads, what you're going to see here in a second is a Microsoft form. And that form is just simple, information tab that we let people input information for their registration site. Of course, it's not loading right now. But it lets people put in their information and then they submit the information. And then here's what happens is once they submit it, we've got Power Automate connected to it. So I used a little template that we have as part of Power Automate, which we'll explain in a bit. And it gives us a notification flow right here in the general channel. So I can pick any channel for this to go into, but we wanted it to land in the general channel. And it lets me know that the form has been filled out and we have a new registration submission received. And I can click on this and I can view the submission details, and then we can go get the registration page set up. And then what I'll do is once that registration page is set up, that's a bad example because we don't have one there. Let's go to today's. So this is the channel where we plan the event that you're in right now. And if you go up here, I then will pin the registration page in the channel. So people inevitably need to go back and find the registration page. They can go right back to the channel and they don't get lost. We also have a planner board on here. And if anybody's not familiar, this is where we basically project manage and plan future content. So we're actually planning right now the content we're going to have in the next iteration of these events. So a lot of great stuff coming. And then I've also planned the presentation itself. So we put the presentation in this group and in the team and channel so we can all co-author and work on it, which we did for this event. So again, just makes my life easier because you don't get the inevitable questions. Where is the registration page? What content's coming next? Where is the presentation so we can work on it and edit our slides? It's all sitting right there. And then finally, this one's really cool. So using this event builder service, what I then do is I'll go in and I'll hover over. So again, this is the EMEA time zone community roadshow that we're on right now, is I will click on the ellipses for this channel and I will get the email address and I'll copy it. And then what I did is I went into Event Builder and I set up a daily registration report so we can get the numbers and the updates on this as it's coming, and I send it into this email address, which is this channel. So every morning we get a daily registration report that posts right here into our channel. So just an awesome, easy setup. I do not have a technical background. All of this stuff was incredibly easy to set up at any level of experience in Microsoft Teams. So just again, wanted to show you some of these things that we're using in order to make our lives easier. And then finally, what I'll do is after each event, so I'll give you an example here with Malaysia, is I'll post some impact slides and some of the customers, so I won't do this for this event necessarily, but when we do the smaller roadshow events where we have about 10, 15 customers, I'll post some impact slides on the team, share some of the recaps of the event, as well as who came and joined us. And then what I will also often do if we record it is inside of the message, I'll use what we call a messaging extension in Teams. And I love this one, I use it all the time. So I hit reply and I can click on all of these icons down here, but the one I use often is YouTube. When I click on YouTube, this extension pops up. And what I can do is I can search for videos on YouTube without leaving Teams. And you can do this with a bunch of different applications. If anybody uses Trello as an example, they have one that allows you to search across your Trello boards. And there's a bunch coming for a lot of Microsoft apps. Again, my PC's running really slow because I've got a bunch of stuff going on right now, so forgive me. But what'll happen is you actually get the video here, it'll pop up and give you a preview, and you can click on that preview and share it with everybody. So what I'll be doing is I'll be sharing the videos of these recorded events with everybody so they can then share it with their peers. So again, showing you how all these apps start to follow me throughout my day and make life a little bit easier. We thought some real examples might be nice. I was kind of hoping one of the customer success managers might put me in an awkward spot and put a funny message on there. You guys got to do that next time. All right, so going back to the slides here. I forgot to show you the demo slide. So again, maybe just recapping on what we covered there. So I showed you how we integrate some Microsoft apps like Planner, like Forms. We had third-party apps like YouTube. Unfortunately, it didn't load, but you guys get the point. And then you saw Flow, which was a part of Power Platform, and that was the trigger and the action that sent the notification into the general channel when somebody filled out that registration form. So I'll continue to do this as we go forward so you can see which applications we're talking about here. All right, so what are your customers doing around the globe? I'm going to skip this maturity curve and I'm going to go straight into the scenario that we're going to cover right here. And the scenario in this case is, imagine if you had few people who were responsible for helping many people. And I want everyone to think about that one for a second. It's subject matter experts, it's support desks, it's not just IT support desks, it's support desks within each organization, it's support desks for your customers. And every organization on the planet probably has something set up like this. And I'm phrasing it this way because in the context of Dentsu, who's the organization that we're going to share about here, their challenge that they were experiencing in terms of support and having few people responsible for many was coming from their IT collaboration team. 3 people responsible for 60,000 people across the globe in 170 countries for adopting any piece of technology that Dentsu had invested in for their people. So you can imagine they've got to figure out how to scale. So what we want to do is share with you their story and the real journey that they had and how they evolved this support model and how they scaled and drove ultimately organic adoption of teams with 3 people leveraging no training. So what we're going to do is we've got a quick minute video that I'm going to show you. And you can now share videos with audio inside of these live events. So really cool feature. And then what we'll do is we'll show you behind the scenes exactly what's happening here. So I'll pause for a minute and share this with you, and then we'll be back on.
We're one of the largest media agencies globally.
60,000 people in 170 countries. We had to think really carefully about how we rolled out teams. We didn't have a lot of resource to drive this rollout. We only had a team of 3 people.
By leveraging the third-party tools and the extensibility of Teams, we were able to build a chatbot to help people find answers. How do I do this? Where do I find that?
We didn't have to have a big training team.
And we've only sent 1 communications to announce the move from Skype to Teams. One of the most interesting things that we saw was the viral adoption. People saying, have you seen this product? It works really well.
We started with a pilot of 5,000 users. We're now at 30,000 users. Teams provides many different business benefits. It has rejuvenated other existing platforms and technology investments we had. Teams becomes your front door for everything you do. Changes the game on many levels.
As I mentioned earlier, I came from product marketing, and we actually built this video with Dentsu in the UK. And we used to get a lot of feedback from customers. They say, look, this is great. It's awesome to see what's possible, but how is that done? How does this happen behind the scenes? And how do you ultimately get to that point where Dentsu did? And so for a little bit of background here, I'm going to walk you through this journey with Dentsu. But just to clarify what you heard in the video is with Microsoft Teams, ultimately what we're going to get to in this journey with them is with Microsoft Teams, they saw a lot of interest and the potential for organic adoption. And by that, I mean, how do you get people to adopt without having to run a bunch of in-person and formal training? And so relevant today more than ever, because in most cases, in most places around the world, in-person training isn't even an option at the moment. But how do you get people to organically adopt and leverage the resources that you built for them, right? And so I want to show you their journey here and how this all happened. And so bear with me. These are my ridiculous drawings, and I'm gonna put them together here. But this is Dentsu version 1.0, how they originally ran support before everything that happened in the video. And what would happen is anytime a new user was assigned technology, if they had questions and they wanted to get more information or they had an issue, they'd reach out directly to one of these 3 people in the IT collaboration team. And you saw 2 of them in the video, Patience and Perrine. And they'd ask them a question. And they'd pull in information from their own brain, from the internet, from their peers, or from other internal resources or knowledge bases, like intranet sites, as an example. And hopefully and ultimately, they get that person a response. Now, while this could be effective, it was very slow in a lot of cases for support. And it put a lot of pressure on the 3 people who were getting all of these questions from 60,000. So you can imagine they're just acting like a support desk all the time. And they wanted to say, how do we start to service our people, which most IT organizations, that's their goal if they're not already there. And so enter version 2.0, now they started running support. And so I mentioned this earlier and they talk about it in the video, but what Dentsu said is they said, look, we've got all this great tribal knowledge all around the organization. Why don't we take that information and bring it into one single pane of glass? In this case, that was a SharePoint intranet page. So it's just an intranet page for those that aren't familiar with SharePoint. And now when users reach out to us, what we're going to do is we're going to point them to the SharePoint page and say, we've got training resources and content right there that's relevant for the question that you sent over. And they said it was fairly effective, but it was hard to get people to go straight here, which was their ultimate goal, as much as they told them about the WorkSmart page. And so now enter version 3.0, which this is what they talked about in the video. And so Dentsu saw the potential in Microsoft Teams, and they wanted to test this opportunity to say, can we truly drive natural and organic adoption? And so what they did is they said, all right, let's take this investment that we've made in WorkSmart and let's actually have it show up as a Teams bot. And so what happens is when new users interact with this bot, it's actually just pulling information and responding based on the questions and the content that exists in the SharePoint site. So this right here is called a knowledge base. Okay? Now, knowledge base can be, that's a terrible drawing. Knowledge base can be anything as simple as a Word document or an Excel file to something as complex as an intranet page. And you can use the bot to connect into those resources. Now, if anybody's familiar with Azure, which is one of our clouds, we have a service on there called Q&A Maker. And it's a bot template, requires no coding to get started. And you simply just point the bot template into your knowledge bases that you want it to use when it gets asked questions. Now, Dentsu put some work into this. They absolutely used a developer and they gave it natural language and built machine learning and artificial intelligence into it. But the ultimate point was people were familiar with the WorkSmart page. And so what they did is the IT team this time proactively reached out to users and said, you're going to be getting Microsoft Teams. Your single point of contact is the WorkSmart bot. And we pinned it for you on the left-hand side of Teams. And what that means is it showed up as a tab in Teams below where you see activity and chat and calendar. And it was sitting right there for users. So it was very easy to find. And they said, ask the Teams bot, ask the WorkSmart bot a question if you have anything. It'll give you resources, it'll give you training videos, etc. And if it can't answer your question, it'll notify one of us, which were the 3 people in the IT collaboration team, and we'll get back to you with a response as soon as possible. So they saw a huge reduction in the amount of questions they were getting because people were now able to self-serve with this Teams bot, again, by just leveraging all of this content and information that already existed within Dentsu. And just for the tech folks out there who often are probably working with services like ServiceNow, is what they're doing next now is connecting into the SharePoint site. Teams bot is connected here. Now, when a user asks the bot a question, if it can't answer, what it'll do is instead of reaching out to the IT collaboration team directly, it'll spin up a ServiceNow ticket. All right, so the limits are endless with some of these things we can do in Microsoft Teams. The limits are endless. There are unlimited possibilities of what we can do with Microsoft Teams here. And we wanted to show you, again, a couple examples of what your peers are doing around the globe. Now, to pause for a second and bring this back to another real example and something that we're doing, I wanted to show you within Microsoft how we're leveraging some of these app templates in order to do the exact same thing that Dentsu is doing. Now, the good news is this has become infinitely easier than it was for Dentsu to actually get started on these. And so I'm going to show you a little demo here with a bot called Appy. Now, Appy is something that I worked with our engineering team to get started. And we, again, are doing the same thing that Dentsu was doing. Now, inside of this app, which I have pinned on the left-hand rail, so it's sitting over here, stuck on my team's rail, if that makes sense. What you can see is this tab right here is it's a SharePoint intranet page. This is where we brought together all of our different resources around Teams platform. So again, that's what I look after for our global customer success organization. And we wanted to make it easier for our customer success managers when they needed content to be able to find it. So like Dentsu, first thing we did is said, let's amalgamate it and put it into this single page. Then what we did is we said, let's also give it a chat functionality and a bot service. And so leveraging one of our app templates, we built this bot service so you can interact with Appy here. It can also proactively send you messages. So that's our company communicator. We'll go into app templates at some point in a later call, but if anybody's familiar, we also leverage 2 app templates here where we can directly send messages to users. And so Appy did this for us a couple of weeks back, letting us know that marketing had created this great new resource and an external website that was about best apps and teams for remote work. And so Appy sent us a notification and I'd scroll back up, but I've been using it so much, it'd take me ages to get there. So instead, what I'll do is I'll show you the search functionality. Now, for folks who aren't necessarily comfortable searching with bots and leveraging them, is there's a menu option here that you can pre-populate yourself and give you options on how to use it. And so when I hit search and I hit enter, Appy is going to give me some pre-populated options for me so I can help find the content that I need. So in this case, let's say that I'm about to show some of what I'm showing you to a customer, and I want to get some materials to leverage throughout my presentation. So Appy's still typing. And in case Appy doesn't agree with me, this is the first time, what I'll do is I'll show you actually the way this process worked up here above. Let's try this one more time. Yep. So I'm going to go back up. I've got a lot going on my PC. But basically, Appy will walk me through this process. And this right here is what we call an adaptive card. And Appy will walk me through a series of 2-3 questions where this card pops up and it asks me a series of questions. And eventually I get to the point where I told it, I want to have custom solutions for application development in teams. And funny enough, one of the ones that I clicked on yesterday when I was doing this demo for the Asian time zone is I clicked on the Dentsu video. So if you scroll down right here, you can see the Dentsu video. And when I clicked on the Dentsu video, it actually popped up here with a new card and it gave me the link to the video that we just showed you. Right, so really cool experience inside of Teams that again is just leveraging the content that's sitting right here. Now the beauty is in this case, so real example, you know, I've got a ton going on my PC right now. Appy didn't respond to my question yet. I can still go to the platform resource library, which is this intranet page that's sitting right there, and go search for the content that I want anyways. So it's this beauty of having both options there, whatever works best for you, but the discoverability of having the application right here is pretty awesome. So let me try that one more time and see if I can actually show it to you. Fingers crossed here. There we go. All right, so let's say I want to show a success story. So again, I get a bunch of options and notice that Appy's card actually updates itself, which is pretty slick. And then I want a custom app development and rollout, as I mentioned earlier. And then this gets me right back to that screen. So again, just leveraging the content that's sitting here in the resource library. And this is the video that we're going to show you here in a sec around how Javi's doing this with Power Apps. So again, resources right there, beautiful image that renders, just a slick way to actually leverage this content that we already have. And the reason I show you that is I don't want you to just think about this in the context of IT support. We built that application right there because there were few of us who had access and knowledge around all these resources, and we wanted to disperse it. We want to make it easy for people to get what they needed when they needed it, and enlighten customers, if you will, and show them what's possible. So hence Appy. Now, at this point, I'm hoping folks are excited and they're looking forward to delivering some of their own innovation in your organization. One thing I'd say is we get a lot of organizations that come to us and they get excited and they want to, they tell us we want to build a Teams bot or we want to build an app for Teams. And we're very humbled by that and we're very excited by it as well. But I'd also politely say, take a step back for a second, because it's more important to start here with the business scenario. What are we trying to achieve before we go build something? Because the reality is, if you cannot have to build something and we've already got a solution that exists for it, let's go with the path of least resistance. Let's give organizations the minimum viable product to achieve what they want to achieve. And a couple questions that I always ask everybody to share with their organizations and customers as they're having this conversation are these two right here. How are people getting work done today? And I think it's easy to start with more of a specific group when you're asking that question versus just broadly. And then where is the pain point in that current process? Or where does work slow down? And I'm gonna show you a great example here in a second from Javi, as I mentioned earlier, on where work was slowing down for them. But where do processes take too long? And so thinking about it in this context makes it a lot easier to start with a solution that's gonna achieve what you want it to. Now, Teams has been around for 3 years. So as you can imagine, we've seen a lot of common scenarios from organizations around the planet. And I'm just gonna leave this slide with you because this is recorded, but I did highlight in green some of the really common ones that we're hearing from organizations around the planet and some of these scenarios that they're tackling within their organizations. And then to close out on this thought is we're also here to help you get started. And I've referenced a few of these today, but we don't expect you to do this alone. And we've got a couple places to get going based on your appetite and what you actually want to deliver. So again, the easiest place to start is you just want to use existing solutions, whether they're the ones that you're already using today. So for example, I mentioned it earlier, but if you already use Trello today, you can bring that experience into Teams and leverage it better because it actually has more functionality in the experience in Teams than it does outside. But you can also leverage it in the context of chat and collaboration. Or if you're trying to solve a specific scenario, there might already be a solution that exists, and more than likely, there probably already is a solution that exists in the Teams App Store. So again, bottom left-hand side of your Teams client, if you don't have access to apps, you can go see the publicly available ones here. And yes, we will share these links. Now, the other one is I want to build my own solution. So I referenced this earlier, and you saw this example when I was showing how we plan these events, and you fill out the form and it gives me a notification in a channel of choice. So these are, you can make these really easy and leverage templates, which is what I was doing. So these really simple templates that you can build into the Teams experience, or you can go full-fledged, get your developers on board and build something like I'm about to show you here in a second that Javi built, and everything in between. And then we also have these common scenarios that we saw organizations around the planet delivering, and we built, Teams Engineering built this concept of Teams app templates. And so these are to help you get started if you want to customize your own existing solutions. And just a reminder, Appy, the one I showed you and just demoed, was a combination of 2 different application templates. So we've started all the hard work, and these are open sourced. And for those that maybe aren't technical, that just means it gives you the ability to customize it, but they're also production ready, meaning you can deploy them as they are today and leverage them as existing applications. Okay, so Power Platform. To give you a really quick background before we show you what this looks like, there's 3 components to it. I'm going to focus on the first 2 for right now. And the first one is Power Apps, and these are really just web and mobile applications. And these can be a simple interface that is essentially just a form to receive information, or you can build this into a full-fledged application and everything in between. It's tons of possibilities here. And again, lots of templates to get started. And then Power Automate is just a series of automation and workflows. So how do you automate routine tasks? So again, I automated the notification for me on that registration form earlier where it notified me in a channel of choice. And Power Automate's a set of triggers and actions. And so a lot of times what we'll actually see to simplify this one step further is organizations will build Power Apps as forms, and they're just there to receive data and information. And once that data and information has been received, that's the trigger that kicks in Power Automate. And Power Automate will then determine where you send that data and information, whether that's to systems, people like we did in the channel earlier, et cetera. And so I want to give you a really quick, easy demo of what this looks like, just to give you the foundation, and then we'll show you that example I've been talking about with Javi here in a second. And so again, what we're going to touch on right here is Power Platform, particularly using Power Apps and Flow or Power Automate. And this demo that I'm going to show you is one that we put together and showed at our partner conference last year. And the context here was, as we're planning these big conferences, we have tens of thousands of people coming to. We use a lot of vendors and contractors to help us put these and make them a reality. And the challenge is a lot of times getting really simple approvals takes way too long. So as an example, how do we organize the chairs in this room? Do you want the speaker to have a cheat screen so they can see the notes on their slide? What catering do we want to serve here, et cetera, right? Tons of different questions that get asked, and waiting on responses takes a lot of time and wastes a lot of time for our vendors. And so we thought, how do we make that easier? And so this isn't the actual app we use, but it's very similar. And what you're seeing right here is I'm inside of a Teams team. In this case, we would invite our vendors, so external guests, into this team. And within this tab right here, we've embedded this Power application. This is a really simple template that this Power application has as a backend. And if you're a vendor and you say, for example, I want to make a new request, you just hit this plus sign, this very, very simple form pops up, and you fill that out, and then you hit submit, which is the checkbox right here. Now here's where Power Automate kicks in. So remember, triggers and actions. It determines where you're sending this data. So when you hit submit, 2 things happen. This adds a new file into a SharePoint list. And then just like you saw with the registration page earlier, we actually wanted to have this flow or the Power Automate send a notification into the channel of our choosing. So in this case, we chose the same channel just for simplicity. Now I accidentally clicked it the other day, but the way this flow works is because it's an approval flow, it actually will have 2 buttons at the bottom of this card that say approve or reject by default. And so you can approve this from within the channel. So if you have multiple people who are responsible for planning this event sitting in this channel, they'd all have the ability to approve or reject a request. And you can add custom experiences there. You can have an option and a button that says, we want to chat with the person who made the request. But if you hit approve or reject, that person who made the initial request will also get notified immediately. So these don't get stuck in someone's email inbox or even in a chat message while somebody's in meetings. They can go into a channel where multiple people have the option to respond to it. And again, just want to give you a really simple example of what Power Platform kind of can deliver at its core. Now, for a more fun example, is we're going to go to a customer example here. And forgive me, this is the last imagine if, but wanted to share the scenario first and take my own advice on the start with the business scenario. So imagine if either in your current role or previous role or previous organization, you had an approval process at work that takes longer than it should. And by that, I mean you have, in this case, you have multiple people entering the same information into different systems. And the person who's next in line to enter that information can't enter it until the previous person has put it into their system, right? Sounds archaic, but we see it in a lot of organizations. And frankly, I'd like to tell you Microsoft is better, but I'm certain we do this in certain parts of our organization as well. We all struggle with these challenges, right? And so Javi is no different. Javi is a supply chain and marketing organization based in the UK, and they were struggling with their new hire pre-boarding automation. And so for them, this case was when we decide we're going to hire a new contractor, what does the process look like behind the scenes in the 2 weeks that lead up to them actually starting work on day one? So how do we order them a laptop? How do we get them into our systems with an email address? How do we get them ready to work and to go on day one when they come into the office for the first time? So like Dentsu, I'm going to show you a quick video, and then we're going to go behind the scenes again with Javi so you can see exactly what they delivered, leveraging a little bit of our Microsoft Azure Cloud and then Power Automate and Power Apps, which I just demoed to you. So again, 1 minute video, and then we'll pop into that.
Javi is located all over the world. We have about 9,000 to 10,000 employees.
We tend to use a lot of freelancers. With that comes a lot of paperwork with the onboarding.
The problem with a manual process is the accuracy of the data.
We have to find better ways of onboarding people.
We quickly saw the advantage and the potential of Teams and the Power Apps.
So by automating document processing, we can speed up all paper-based processes that we have.
Before the app, registration process could take 2 weeks. Now we managed to reduce the time to less than 40 minutes.
Microsoft Teams is allowing us to centralize many of the operations such as SharePoint and messaging, voice communications.
Now we have all those forms, all those documents in one central place, and that central place is Teams. We use Teams all over the world.
Possibilities are exciting for the future.
Teams is here to stay.
All right, so again, great video, sets the scene, but we really want to understand how this happened and what's the journey that Javi went through. And so I'm just going to jump into it because we really want to get you some time with our guests who have joined us today. And so real quick, what I'm going to show you, again, like the Dentsu example, is what this looked like before the solution that they implemented within Javi. So you're going to see the challenge here first that they were facing. And again, I'd encourage you to think about this in the context of your own organization, not just as an onboarding scenario. And so what would happen is Javi rep would send an email out to a new hire, congratulate them, say, welcome to Javi, we're offering you a job. Can you send us back some personal information so we can go ahead and get the process started? And then they take that personal information and enter it into multiple internal HR systems. So these are Javi systems, not built by Microsoft. I only put one here just for the simplicity of the slide, but multiple systems. And then that same rep would send the same information out to their peers. They'd go put that information into their own internal systems. And eventually they'd send back a notification to the original rep saying, all right, we've completed the task. So as you can imagine, number of manual data entries is high. Lots of people entering the same information into various systems across the place. So prone to error. And so this process, best case, if it worked perfectly, would take 5 to 6 hours. But unfortunately, it usually breaks down somewhere around here. And somebody would miss an email with the information, or they'd incorrectly input some of the data. So they'd misspell a name, they'd incorrectly put in the tax ID number, et cetera, and it'd start the whole process over. And so unfortunately, the average time to complete this process was 2 to 3 weeks, which often meant that this new contractor was in jeopardy of starting work on day one with nothing to do, maybe even week one, spending it in a boardroom. And these people are constantly acting like a reactive support desk, right? So not an ideal scenario, and it's honestly putting them in jeopardy of potentially having turnover. And so what Javi did in this brilliant, elegant solution to a complex challenge is this is what happened, and what they were talking about in the video is the process started the same way. Reach out to the new hires, congratulate them, get back some information. But here's where the process changed. Rather than entering this information into the internal HR system, Javi rep would now put this info into a Power App. And because the back end of the Power App was Power Automate, remember, instead of triggers and actions, it would automatically send this data into all of these internal Javi systems in an automated fashion. And so now there was only one manual data entry. It happened right here. And this took a process that best case was 5 to 6 hours, average case was 2 to 3 weeks, down to 40 minutes. by automating this process. So now this person can start work on day one. These people are no longer putting out fires and band-aids all over the place and can proactively work on projects that are valuable to them. So a great, very tangible scenario. One thing I'll say is Javi has been kind enough to share with us how they did this. And they even gave us the access to their runbook. So we'll share this out, but this is a direct link to their runbook, which shows the flow and the process they built behind the scenes to make this work. And it's much less complicated than you might think to initially get started. Last thing I'll say before I hand it off to Kit and the team is, again, we all struggle with this stuff. When I was working for JP Morgan Chase as a banker, I would have loved if my loan officer would have sent a digital loan application to my clients. They would send back their information, and then rather than reaching out to the underwriter and the loan processor and all these other employees that just seem to slow down the process, what if that officer could have put the information into a Power App that could have automatically sent it into these systems, and ultimately we get this person a response on their loan application more quickly. All right, so there's a ton of opportunity here as we go through all of these scenarios and work with you as organizations. Okay, I'm done chatting. I'm very excited. We've got a real example to show with you today. So I'm going to pass off to Kit, and she's got a couple ladies from Novo Nordisk who have been doing some incredible things. So Kit, over to you. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Jace. I'm extremely pleased to have with me here today Kaja and Kathleen from the Novo Nordisk team. I've been supporting Novo Nordisk for the past 1.5 years on their Office 365 journey. A tremendous Teams project running in the fall last year with now more than 45,000 users on Teams, you know, exploring all the fantastic collaboration features that we have there, but now also for the past 6 months embarking on a new Power Apps journey within Novo Nordisk as a joint effort between the global IT organization and the global development team in R&D that Kaja and Kathleen is now part of. So Kaja and Kathleen, I'm extremely pleased to now have you present what you have been doing throughout the past couple of months, utilizing Power Apps and some of the app templates that we have available to also cope with the current COVID crisis that we're in. So over to you two ladies.
Thank you so much, Kit. And we are very happy to be here. It is myself, Kathleen, and Kaja here in the room. We are all together. And I hope you can see the screen as well. Could we just have a confirmation from your side, Kit?
Yes.
Perfectly. So we are here to present how we actually responded to the COVID-19 pandemic that has emerged over the last couple of months. And our introduction is actually that we want to present the team that has been working on this. It is myself and Kai in the room. Then we have Anton and Toge, who Kit has also been talking about. And we are a department in research and development that is called Digital Innovation. And we are working with very different application and solutions, and Power Apps is one of them. Yeah. So let's get you into the situation we actually have found ourselves in. And I think, as you all know, COVID-19, the pandemic has impacted us all personally and professionally. So what we are doing in Novo Nordisk and in global development is actually doing clinical trials. And clinical trials is actually finding out if a new medicine, before it's launched everywhere, is safe and effective in actual human beings. So at the time of the COVID-19 pandemic start, and also currently, we have a lot of those trials ongoing with a lot of patients in a lot of hospitals and several countries around the world. So it has had a huge impact on all the business processes. And I think a lot of our countries, all our employees, they've been asking several of the same questions around the world, and we wanted to give them also a uniform answer from a headquarter perspective. And those questions could just be, how do we operate under these changed circumstances? Also, when do we expect the situation to change?
Yeah. So there were a lot of questions and information that we needed to gather. So how did we respond? We simply, I was about to say, we built 2 internal apps, one of them being a Q&A app that replaced existing tools that were used, and we also improved the already established process for taking these questions in and answering them. Then we also had the other app that came after the Q&A app launch, which was a site status app, where we gathered some new additional data and information across countries and actually going globally to gather information on the situation on the different sites and hospitals that we have. But let's start with the Q&A app, which was the first one we launched. So the situation that we were looking in before was that we had, as Kathleen said, a lot of questions that were raised, and they were raised via many channels. So they could come from emails and chats and Teams. They could come from Sharepoint sites, phone calls, etc. So it's very hard for the task force to handle and have an overview of all of these questions coming in. But as I said, we had a task force, and they handled the recipients' receivings, the reviews, the approvals, and the publishings of new questions. And all of these processual tasks were kept track of, and the progress of them were kept track of in an Excel spreadsheet. So that gave them very little overview of how to actually both navigate through all the questions, but also in terms of what were the versions of the different questions and what were the versions of the answers and etc.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think Novo Nordisk also, I think we're very heavy in the use of Excel, which is a very manual update and a very error-prone process to keep track of. So in the end, I think there's a lot of people involved, and in the publishing phase, you actually took the Excel sheet, put it into a Word document, and then again put it into a PDF. So it is it's a very manual process with the versioning. And in the end, as the one, you have a question in the country, you would go to the Sharepoint site, you would find the updated document, and then you would manually search as you would do normally in the document. So I think there were potentially a lot of improvements to gain there.
Definitely. So we changed quite a few things. We introduced a system that supported this review process and included an audit trail instead of having them manually getting an overview and tracking the versioning, the changes and everything inside an Excel spreadsheet. We developed a system, a model-driven app that supported that process instead, so they didn't have to think about that anymore. And that took a lot of manual time and handling away from what they had to do in terms of answering questions and such. We also had a front-end app, as we call it, a Canvas app, that we built from the crisis communication template from Microsoft, and that gave us an easy access to the newest questions and answers anywhere that were published from the backend system, the model-driven app, and we could easy access from any device actually. So we could go in through telephone or laptop, and anywhere in the world we could see what were the questions and answers in a very easy manner compared to what we had previously. Yeah, and also we had we made a single point of contact. So like I said, at first we had many questions coming in from all different channels. Now we actually just had one point of contact instead, going through this Canvas app, as I'm showing you here. To the left, this is the front end app we have, and as you see on the top, we have a Ask a New Question button, and that enabled us to have a single point of contact instead, where all the questions are now coming in, making it a lot easier for a task force to get an overview of the different questions and how to respond to them afterwards in the system.
Yeah, and I think this app and actually the success of the first app, the Q&A app, actually paved the way for everyone to be aware of what Power Apps, what the Power Platform actually can give of value to the business. So the next step was actually after having launched and trained for the Q&A app internally, upper management saw also a sudden need, of course, for something else, for additional information, for a global site status, that is the hospitals and our clinical trials, to actually predict potential reopenings in the future. So they came to us and explored the possibility of us making a Power App for gathering this information. And of course, we had we have kept track on an individual project level using Excel sheets and putting information in there. But in any point, there was limited global overview. So this app, with all the information in there, could give the helicopter overview and predict everything that was going on at any point in time.
Yeah. And just to emphasize, we did this in 9 days, not the first app, we did that in 2 weeks from scoping to launch, including training sessions with all of the users. We have approximately 2,600 users that are using the front end, and then we have the task force using the back end system with the model-driven app. And this app, we took it from scoping to launch for 9 days, within 9 days. And then we did training sessions where we actually had, I think, a little more than 800 attendees in total on the 2 different training sessions. So it just shows that we can really launch and accelerate in a very quick manner using the Power Platform and a good scoping.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think about what we have learned and what will be enabled us to do is actually that we actually have the expanded licenses for all users. That made it very easy for us to actually build the front end and the back end and the security models, and everyone had access along the way. And I think also a close contact with Microsoft along way with the development has helped us in the deployment that was so fast. And I think, as again said, it's like it's a domino effect. If you have an app that works, you have developed it fast, it works, it's launched, it's easy to use, it's for the rest of the organization, it's easy to see the benefit of having a development tool that is so easy and quick.
Yeah.
And I think for us, again, it's of course the agile way of working. It's so important to have engaged product owners in the business, and this agile and the focus on the functionality. Just us, the team, are in this together for 2 weeks and almost not working on anything else. Then the app has given us the opportunity to actually launch this in record time.
Yeah.
I think, should we go to the next one? I think there's one more, because I think we have some restrictions as well. Of course, this had been a success, both of them. We have high user rates, and it's still being used, although COVID-19 is slowly on the decline. I think a reflection from our side is, of course, that it's a small team that we are in, and we're covering both development and operations. And we are having a lot of support along the way. There is no launch without any hiccups. So we had a high demand for hypercare and still have
a high demand for supporting the users going forward.
Yes, and I think that was it from our end. A quick deep dive into what we have done in Novo Nordisk.
How we utilize the different toolings in very short and effective manner.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Kit, I don't know if you want to close off there, but thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, again, I think it has been an amazing journey. It has been awesome to see what you guys have been able to actually accomplish within such a short time frame. I think exactly the fact that you have a dedicated team working on this, allowing you to, pitch ideas and bring all good things to the table right away is really what matters here, and what provides the value at its best, and as quick as it turned out to be. Awesome job. And again, I'm extremely happy that you wanted to join here, present. I think a lot of people on the call can learn from this as well, and also just showcasing how easy it actually is if you have the right resources available and are all in on this. But given the fact that the platform was in place, it was a nice and decent journey to actually kick off. Yeah. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Just amazing. And if you didn't read my Q&A, I've got to call it out, Kit. I stupidly am the only producer on this event because I wanted to make it easy for everybody joining. Unfortunately, the limit to that is my screen is stuck and won't let me change Kit. So Kit's going to continue to remain on video. Kit, if you want, feel free to mime what I'm saying, and maybe we can sync up
I'll try to do my best.
So just a real quick close off is if you found today valuable, we already have the next event up and ready for you to sign up. We'll also send this link out afterwards. We'd love to see you at future events. And again, future events will be a little more specific and focused on particular scenarios that we'll share beforehand. Someone just posted on this, so thank you so much for the feedback. Please do feel free to share this with your peers in the recording when we send it out. If you've got questions, connect with your Microsoft account team or your local partners. If anybody is interested, we also have a superheroes community where we keep this conversation going via Teams. So on a Microsoft tenant where we invite a bunch of customers, give me an email. I'll also send this out to everybody, but it's just jacemarino@microsoft.com if you want to join. And then most importantly out of all this, we would love to hear not only how we did, but most importantly, what you want to hear about next. So this is a QR code. If you just scan your phone up to it right now, you can fill out this form. I'll also send the form out to everybody as a link afterwards. Now, we'd love to hear how we did, but this isn't about us going back and sharing great feedback with our bosses. This is genuinely about hearing from you and topics that are most important to you and that you want to hear about moving forward. So we'd sincerely appreciate you sharing some of your feedback with us, positive and where we have opportunities. And then ultimately, we're a couple minutes over, so thank you for those that stuck around, but we just want to say thank you. Thank you to Kit. Thank you to the ladies from Novo Nordisk. You're one of my favorites. I talk about you guys all the time, so thank you so much for the partnership there. And thank you for all the customer success manager legends we have behind the scenes, Angela and Luis and everybody who's answering questions. We look forward to doing more of these with you, and please let us know what we can do to make this better and get you content that's more relevant. And Kit, thank you so much for posing for the last 15 minutes. You've been fantastic.
No worries. It's nice being live when you don't have to talk.
Take care, everybody.